Hello, and welcome to our show for the love of animals. We're so glad you joined us today. I'm Darleen Pigford.
And I'm Greg Baur, and we would like to tell our viewers about a couple of upcoming shows. One on first aid for cats, which will be somewhat parallel to this show today, and also one discussing the animal ordinances and laws that pertain to Paducah and McCracken County.
Sounds great, Greg.
Well, I think it will be. Darleen, what's on tap for today?
Well, Greg, we're doing something very special. We have a two-part series on emergency first aid for dogs.
Okay.
And this is part one, and part two will be following this, alternating on weeks. And we're so glad to do this. So we want our viewers to get paper and pencil because we're giving you a lot of information and a lot of resources. Greg, introduce our guest, would you please?
Be happy to, Darleen. We're very, very happy to have with us today Dr. Lanita Flanary, a local veterinarian here in the Paducah area. And we want to welcome you to the show, Lanita.
Lanita, thank you so much for coming.
No problem.
And you have another guest there.
Yes, I do. This is Bitsy Boo. She's my little baby.
Well, glad to have her.
And we'll hear more about her in one of the happy tales coming up a little bit later. So let's start out, Lanita. Tell us about your fur family, if you will.
I live on a farm at the edge of Marshall and Graves County. And currently I have 3 dogs. I have 4 cats. I have 2 potbelly pigs, I have 35 head of cattle, I have 2 miniature horses, I have chickens, ducks, geese, pigeons, I have 5 miniature goats.
So that's the Flanary Zoo, right?
Yes, and I have rabbits too.
Oh my goodness.
How do you find time to take care of all those animals?
Well, that's what I like to do. So it's kind of therapy, I guess, or stress relief too. So
I agree with that.
get up in the morning or take care of them late in the evening.
Okay.
Tell us, how did you get started as a vet?
Well, when I went into first grade, I said I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I
Really?
really probably have to contribute mostly to my mom. My mom was an animal lover. I grew up around animals. She's 77 and has 4 donkeys and all kinds of animals.
Oh,
And so growing up in the farm area, my animals were my best friends. I played with them all the time. I dressed them up in doll clothes. I fed them, I watered them, and I took care of all the orphan farm animals. And so I decided at a very young age that's what I want to be, and it never changed.
And now look at you today.
Boy, doesn't that fit the title for the love of animals today?
It surely does.
Well, I tell you what, let's get started on emergency first aid
Okay.
with
dogs.
talking about what should be in our first aid kits that we should have readily available in our homes.
Just like we do for humans.
I made a little kit up. I used just a Rubbermaid container. I thought it'd be easier to go over things this way.
Okay.
So we'll go over everything that's in it.
All right.
Okay. First of all, you just need some essentials like cotton balls.
Okay.
Everybody, we're going to use cotton balls all the time for different things, so make sure you got plenty of cotton balls in it.
What might we be using those for?
Cotton balls sometimes we'll use with ear infections or just to clean out wounds or something like that.
Okay.
So lots of cotton balls. I always suggest that you keep a pair of exam latex
Yes.
gloves on hand. There's a lot of times that it can be messy or things
Right.
you have to deal with, so if you have some gloves, that's probably the best thing sometimes. I also, as far as staple items, say to keep a clean sock in there. Pets, whether they're this size, you might need a baby sock, or if they're a big dog, you use a normal adult sock. But these can be used a lot of times for wounds on the legs and the paws and keeping them clean until you can get to a veterinarian's office.
You mean the bandage part?
Yep, use it as a bandage.
Okay, that's an excellent idea.
A roll of tape. And again,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is going to be, you're going to need different sizes of tape, but there's multiple uses for this. Sometimes you're going to have to bandage things. Sometimes you're going to use it actually like as a muzzle and put in the mouth to hold the mouth open on dogs. So there's a lot of uses for this, but a roll of tape in your box is important.
Go back over that. You might use that kind of tape as a muzzle. Okay.
Sometimes, not actually as a muzzle, but to keep the mouth open. Like you
Okay.
can insert this into the mouth of a dog and hold it open so you can look down in their throat.
Okay,
And you don't have
gotcha.
any
Okay.
problem with them biting you. Another thing that you're going to need is some gauze. You
Gauze.
can buy all of these things at your local drugstore or Walmart.
Right.
But gauze, this is used a lot of times for bandages. And we'll go over later, but it's also used as a muzzle too. And I'll show you how
Okay.
to put one on a pet. I also say you get some syringes. You can actually buy syringes of different size. Here's like a smaller one, here's a bigger one.
Okay.
But keep some different size syringes on hand. You can give medications this way. You can give little force feedings this way. There's all different types of things that you will need with syringes.
Okay.
And a few other things is a pair of tweezers. Tweezers, you can pull out splinters,
Gotcha.
wasp stingers and such like that. You're going to have splinter or a pair of tweezers for. You can remove foreign bodies with that, so thorns, so that's a good thing. A lot of times we use tongue depressors. We
Yes.
use them sometimes for bandages to kind of stabilize the leg
Gotcha.
if there was a fracture, and you can also use them, of course, to hold the tongue down to look down the mouth.
Right.
As a splint.
As a splint. And then we have a pair of scissors. Now, I like the round tip scissors. That way you can get them up close. You're not going to have to worry. You can cut bandages off with them. You're not having to worry about cutting the pet.
Okay,
So,
round
because they're
tip.
going to be moving around. They're not like
Yes,
a person
right.
that's going to be still.
Okay.
So we like to use a pair of scissors like this.
Okay, that's a good.
Okay.
And then everybody needs a little lubricant, like KY jelly or some sort, in their box. We'll be using that with the thermometer. And in here, I have a rectal thermometer.
Okay.
You can buy these too, and you do want to make sure that it is a rectal thermometer that you're using with the pet.
Okay.
And then there's some medications that I always suggest you always need. Number one is going to be an eye rinse. You can use saline rinse that you use for contact solution, or you can buy just plain eye rinse at your pharmacy, or sometimes in a pinch you can use Visine. That would work too to flush the eyes.
Okay, now, when you say for contacts, now, is that the conditioner or the cleaner that,
You
for
just
contact?
want to use the plain saline solution.
All right, plain salines, okay.
Yes. Another is a tube of triple antibiotic ointment.
Okay.
Multiple uses for this, and we'll go in more detail with that, but this is a lifesaver right here. And then aspirin, and it's probably best if you put the baby aspirin,
Baby.
81 milligrams.
Milligrams.
Okay. A lot of the days people have Tylenol that they use with their children, but you do not want Tylenol. A lot of dogs can have reaction to it, and it is toxic. Tylenol is to cats. So aspirin is a very safe thing. Almost any dog or cat can take aspirin. So we
Children's
rarely
aspirin.
find children's aspirin.
Okay.
And your veterinarian can tell you in need how much you would use depending on the size of your pet.
Right.
You want to keep peroxide, hydrogen peroxide available. This is going to be used as a cleaner, a flush for wounds, and it's also good if we have to induce vomiting. And then here's the 3 essentials. Imodium AD. This is a great diarrheal medicine, and just the adult human or box of Imodium AD, and then your veterinarian can tell you exactly how much to use as far as the dose, depending on the size of your pet.
All right, so you have to be careful. You've got to know the weight of your animal and the
And-
advice of
right.
your vet on how much to give.
Right.
Okay.
Obviously, in any kind of emergency situation, you need to be in contact with your vet.
Yes.
Right.
Veterinarians, we don't, with our pets, don't have 911 service for pets. We don't have ambulances for pets, so your vet is your only link to making sure you take care of the animal properly until you can get it to them.
So actually, on the outside of our first aid kit, one of the most important things we can put is the number of our local veterinarian.
Yes, that'd be a
Right.
great idea. On your first aid
On your
kit,
first
keep
aid
it on
kit.
your refrigerator. You know, when something happens to your pet, everybody's going to be frantic. So if you'll call your veterinarian either during the day and they can tell you what to do, or emergency numbers. All vets nowadays, we have emergencies and we take them 24 hours a day.
Okay.
Pepsid AC is a good thing to keep in there. Pepsid AC works a lot with vomiting and upset stomach, or if you have a pet that's kind of nauseous. So I always recommend Pepsid AC. And the last important thing is Benadryl. And you do want to get the 25 milligram Benadryl. Another little hint with that, when you go to the pharmacy to pick it up, instead of getting the capsules, get the caplets, because these can be broken in half. And it's a lot easier to give the Benadryl in the pill form than the liquid. They don't like the taste of the liquid.
Oh, okay.
So that is the first aid kit, and we'll be going over a lot of these uses for things as we talk.
It's amazing how much of that we use as human beings.
Yes, we
And-
use mostly the same medications, and we do the same blood tests and x-rays and everything that we do for humans.
Okay.
Well, that is great. Thank you so much for giving us an illustration of that. Okay, you were talking about temperature.
Uh-huh.
Tell us what's normal temperature for a dog, what isn't, and if we, we do need to be able to take our dog's temperature. So
Right.
tell us how to do that.
Well, you want to use the rectal thermometer, like I said, and you'll want to lubricate that with the KY jelly.
Okay.
This isn't probably going to be as hard as you think, because with people we anticipate, oh my gosh, we got to get our temperature taken. But with dogs, they don't know it's coming, so it's pretty relatively easy usually.
Okay.
You want to keep it in about 3 minutes and then read it.
Okay.
Now here's the kicker. With people, we have a set temperature at 98.6. But
Right.
dogs have a range of temperatures that's normal. Anywhere between 99.5 and 102.5 is considered normal for a pet.
Okay, repeat that for us.
99.5 to 102.5.
Okay.
So that's normal, and that's always higher than we are.
That's right. Okay.
A lot of people are going to call and they're going to tell me that their pet feels warm. Well, that's natural. They're going to be warmer than we are, so there's nothing to worry about there.
Okay.
And
Well, taking that temperature, well, let's change the temperature just a little bit now and take a break. We have a happy tale about one of your animals, and that animal is Sissy.
Hi, my name is Sissy, and I am a 13-year-old Boston Terrier. I had a wonderful home with a very nice lady, but she passed away, and I was so sad that I wished I could die too. My owner's husband was very sweet, but he just couldn't help me. He brought me to Lanita, who agreed to take me. Lanita's mom also had a Boston Terrier named Katie. Mom, Katie, and I bonded immediately, and now I have a forever home, thanks to Mom and Lanita.
We hope that our viewers enjoyed that happy tale about Sissy. And before we return to our discussion of emergency first aid for dogs with Lanita Flanary, our guest, we'd like to introduce to you Donna Groves for a very special plea for funds. Donna is treasurer of Project Hope. And Donna, what do we have going on?
Well, we're trying to raise $150,000 for Project Hope. We have some very big needs, including we need a new roof on the shelter. And one of the ways we're doing that is just by asking for donations. Just send it to Project Hope, P.O. Box 125, Metropolis. We're also selling tiles in our paw prints pathway, which will be on display at the shelter.
Oh, okay.
And so you can buy a tile in memory of a pet that has passed on or in honor of a current pet. And you may see that this is one that someone sent me a picture, and so I made them a tile.
It's
and they're
adorable.
They're
Oh,
$25 each.
Or more, whatever somebody
Or more.
Right.
That's a minimum. And then they're going to be a part of a paw prints pathway inside the shelter.
Now,
Okay.
will this be on the wall or the floor? Oh,
On the wall.
On the wall, okay.
Okay.
Well, that is...
We thought about the floor, and then we decided that it's going to be taking some scuffs, and
Right,
we want them to be in pristine condition for a long, long time.
And you've launched a campaign now, and of
We
course
have.
there's no time limit on when
Right.
you'll be finished with it, but the sooner the better.
The sooner the better. We have lots of needs, mainly the roof,
Roof.
but also it costs a lot to run a no-kill shelter
Yes.
because we keep them as long as it takes. They don't have
That's
a
right.
time limit to find their forever home.
And you need cat cages too, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, listen, give us that address and then give us a telephone number in case people want more information.
Okay. The address is P.O. Box 125, Metropolis, Illinois, 62960. And I cannot come up with a phone number
It's
right now.
618-524-8939.
39.
Right. And Greg and I would like to make a contribution
well, thank you.
for this fund, and we do hope that our viewers will help you out too.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thank
coming,
you so
Donna.
much.
Yes.
We'd like to thank Donna for coming and sharing information with us about the fundraising campaign this afternoon. And now we'd like to take a break and move to another happy tale about Matty Moo.
My name is Matty Moo, and I am a Burmese mountain dog. When I was just a puppy, I was introduced to Lanita, and it was love at first sight. I didn't know how lucky I was that Lanita was a veterinarian because I have degenerative joint disease in my hips, shoulders, and elbows. Lanita took me to a specialist in Nashville, but they decided that surgery was not a good option for me. So I'm being treated with medication instead. I go to work every day with Lanita, and she says that I am her shadow. I got my name because I like to play with the calves on the farm. Thanks, Lanita, for for my wonderful forever home.
What an interesting story about Lanita's Maddie Moo. Well, speaking of dogs, Lanita, as we return to our discussion here about first aid for dogs, one of the most common scenes is you find an injured dog, say maybe from a car accident. What do we do on a first aid basis?
Okay. First thing you need to do is to concentrate on the pet itself.
Okay.
You need to check to see if it is bleeding, and you also need to check to see if it's breathing. Those are the main two things that first of all you want to check for.
All right, breathing and bleeding, okay?
As far as like the breathing, what you'll need to do is to look and see, you want to put your hands on both sides of the rib, because a lot of times if it's an injured dog, they're going to have a very shallow, or they might not be breathing. Or you might put your hand in front of their nose and see if you can feel the breath come from there.
Okay.
If they're not breathing, the next thing you're going to do is to check and make sure that, well, first of all, you should make sure if they're not breathing, you want to open their mouth.
Okay.
And you want to look to make sure that there's no obstruction. And to do this, you're just going to have to pull the tongue out. Bitsy didn't like it. And look down in there. Because sometimes an animal might be choking, or it might have even froth or mucus in the back of its throat. So you want to clear that out. Then you want to check for the heart rate. The heart rate can be checked by putting your hands on either side of the chest and feel pretty tightly. Or you can actually feel on the inside of the back leg for a femoral pulse.
Okay.
If you can't find a good pulse rate, or you can't feel the heart, or it's not breathing, you want to go for CPR at that time. When we do CPR on animals, you want to lay them down on the right side, or you'll want their left side up. And then you'll want to extend their head back and open their mouth, and that's where that roll of tape, but you know, you might not have that with you. So you just want to extend the tongue best you can, clear the throat. Again, I stress about the mucus because that's a pretty common thing that'll happen, and then you can't get the airway into their lungs. You want to compress on each side of the chest. If it's a little dog like this, or a cat, you can do it with one hand, but if it's a big dog, you're going to have to go on both sides and pump the chest. And you want to do about 100 compressions per minute. And you'll want to breathe by cupping your hands around the nose and breathing in, and you want to do that about 20 times per minute. You might have to do this all the way to the vet's office and alternate between 3 compressions and a breath and 3 compressions and a breath. But a lot of times you can get them going that way.
Okay. Well, now, if we find an animal that's been injured, if it's my animal, I kind of know if I can hold it or pull its mouth. What if I find an animal and I'm not sure, and maybe, you know, I don't want to get my hands in that animal's mouth.
Right.
It might bite me.
Right.
How do I protect myself, but yet give first aid to the animal?
Well, if it's an animal that you don't know of, you need to be very cautious.
Exactly.
Because if we get hurt, we're going to scream, we're going to cry, we're going to yell, and animals are usually going to bite when they're hurt.
Right.
And it doesn't mean they don't like you, it just means that that's the way that they're expressing themselves. So even our own pets can be that way sometimes. But if you don't know the animal, you need to be very cautious and probably try to start at the back end and work up the animal to see what response you get real quick. Put your hands on it and move your way up to see if this animal is going to let you attempt to do anything or not.
It's likely that this animal will also be quite scared.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
you need to kind of speak in a soothing voice and that sort of
Yes.
thing. It's also good if you have somebody else helping you at
Oh,
this
and
point,
two
if
people are
possible.
going to always help out in an emergency situation better than one. Some other things that you can do if you have the ability is throw a blanket or a big towel over the animal. A lot of
Okay.
times animals find comfort if they're secure. You know, a lot of animals that are hurt will go into hiding. So if you'll cover them, a lot of times you can hold the head and keep the head away, but you can do the compressions, or you can feel around, or you can compress an area that's bleeding or something like that. The other thing you can do is create your own little instant muzzle.
Okay.
I talked about that earlier. You can use like a strip of gauze, or you can use like a piece of rope. I even had a lady who used a belt once.
Okay.
But you'll want to loop it around their mouth. Bitty's going to have a little mouth.
Little mouth.
But you'll want to make a loop, and you're going to put it around and go around, and then you're going to go around the back.
Tied in the back.
And tie it.
Okay.
You got to make sure you have it tied tight. It's not going to hurt them as far as their breathing or anything, but you got to make sure it's tied tight or they can get out of it.
Okay, so you take some string-like material, wrap it around their mouth, and then tie it snugly in the back. Well, that's an excellent idea. Okay.
Another thing that I always tell people is take a plastic cup, like a Solo cup, and cup it over a big dog's mouth.
Okay.
That will
Oh.
help a lot too if you can hold that in place and hold to the back of the head like this. And then you can examine the animal or see what's going on that way. Or you might even actually just be able to pick the animal up that way and hopefully it won't bite you.
Oh, that is excellent. Okay, hopefully I'm not going to find any dogs that have been hit, but you know, you see them on the side of the road so much. Okay, I'm still on the roadside, and I have an injured animal, and I think, say it's bleeding.
Yes.
What do I do?
Okay, bleeding, from where it is bleeding can be a lot harder to find than you can think. Imagine if it was Bitsy.
Oh,
we got
yes.
a lot to look at. You're just going to have to start at the tip of the nose and work to the tip of the tail. Some areas you want to look at is definitely look to see if it's bleeding in the mouth, you know, look to see if it's bleeding in the ears, check to see between the feet, on the bottoms of the feet, but try to find that area. If you are available and have the resources, you'll want to clip the hair from that area, clean it with just soap and water, and if it's a mild abrasion or it's not bleeding, you're okay. Triple antibiotic ointment and you're done. If it is bleeding still excessively, you'll want to compress that area with a clean gauze or a bandage, and you'll want to also maybe apply an ice pack, and that will help decrease the bleeding until you can get it to the veterinarian to be sutured up.
Okay, wow. Well, let's hope we don't find any bleeding animals by the side of the road. Well, we're going to take a break now, and we're going to introduce something new on this show. Greg, why don't you tell our viewers about what's coming up with Forget Me Not?
Well, we have decided to start a new feature with the show, and each show we're going to try to have an animal that has passed away. And we always like to remember those animals. Donna, I think, gave us a nice example of something we can do. But it's something called Forget Me Not. And we would like to invite our viewers to share with this. If you have a pet, we can feature it with the show.
And we're going to give a story now of our remembrance of
Pepper Sprout.
Sprout.
In 1989, a farmer gave us a wee 6-week-old kitten that we all thought was a female. The vet corrected this error and pronounced him as a healthy male cat. From an early age, the kitten seemed to have typical male cat ambitions, and so we named him Pepper Sprout after the old Johnny Cash song. After several years, he became a wonderful lap cat when work permitted us to come home more frequently for lunch. He talked to us all the time. Other new cats came into our home, and Pepper Sprout was always accepting of each one, which is somewhat unusual for a cat. His favorite pastime was helping us in the kitchen, and he always wanted to lick the butter dish. He moved with us 5 times and never complained. In late 2005, he passed away from old age, and our lives have never been quite the same. We will never forget you, Pepper Sprout.
Hope you enjoyed the story about our cat Pepper Sprout, who passed away. We had him from 1989 to 2005. And Greg and I are starting a new program here, and we invite you to participate. If you would like to feature your animal and honor him with a story or either your presence, we ask that you make a donation to an animal organization of your choice. Send that check made out to that organization to Forget Me Not, 3734 Buyer Lane, Paducah, Kentucky, 42001. Give us your phone number and we'll make all the arrangements. So in honor of Pepper Sprout, Greg and I have a check that we're putting in the mail to In His Hands Humane Society, which is a spay-neuter group in Crane, Kentucky. They are not a shelter, but they do wonderful work in spay and neuter. We hope they come to Paducah sometime soon.
Yes. And if you have any questions, you can call us at area code 270-443-8330.
Forget Me Not.
Yes.
All right. Turning from Forget Me Not now and to our discussion with Lanita over pet emergency first aid. If we're still along on the side of the road. What do I do if an animal's in shock?
And how do we know that
Yeah,
they've
how do
been
I
shot?
know an animal's in shock?
Well, there are certain things that you need to look for on the animal. The first thing you want to do is look at the mucous membranes inside the mouth. They should be a normal pink color
Pink.
like Bitsy's are today.
Okay.
But if they are pale or white or look a purplish color or a pale pink, that's one sign of shock.
Okay.
The other is you want to look in the eyes. When an animal's in shock, they'll have like a glossy kind of far away look to them usually.
Okay.
Another sign of shock is they'll either be very shallow breathing or they'll have a very faint heart rate. And they get cold in nature, so sometimes you'll find them shaking. But shock is a life-threatening situation, so any of those signs are present. You need to try to warm the animal by just putting a blanket or something warm around it and get it to the veterinarian as fast as you can for treatment.
Okay. All right, and still by the side of the road, what if I've ascertained that the animal has possibly a broken limb and I want to get the animal to the vet? How do I manage that?
The main thing in that situation is you want to make sure, like we talked about earlier, that the animal, you secure it so that it won't bite you.
Right.
Okay, and then you want to try to stabilize that leg best you can. A lot of times what we'll suggest is to take big towels or a blanket and just wrap big around that leg and to hold it, kind of cushion it from any type of impact. If it's a small dog, you can actually take a piece of wood or a splint and something and hold and tape it with your tape and then put the towel around it. And then transport it. Sometimes we'll slide a sheet underneath them and just pick up the sheet and then put it into your car, and then you can carry them inside the sheet into the veterinarian's clinic.
Okay, an excellent idea. Well, in our last 2 minutes, Lanita, where could we get more information about first aid, and what do you want our viewers to, what's the one thing or two things you want them to remember about emergency first aid for dogs?
I want you to know that you definitely need to have your veterinarian's telephone number at all times with you, because
Okay.
they're going to be the key to hopefully getting that pet to the best care that you can have it for it until you can get to them.
Okay.
You also, I want to say, is if it's your pet, just treat them like a child. You wouldn't let your child outside and not know where it's at. You have to protect these animals, and you have to know their whereabouts at all times, and that really and truly would cut down on a lot of emergencies if we just took more care in knowing where they're at all
Where
times.
our animals were. And as a resource, give us that good website that you have that has a lot of this information on it.
It's www.flanneryvetclinic.com.
And you actually, to get the information about first aid, you go to the first aid icon and click on it, and you'll get a wonderful 2-page handout.
And it says Pet 911.
Pet
It says
911.
Pet 911. Well, Greg, this has been a lot of wonderful information. I hope you don't ever have an emergency with your animal, but if you do, we hope you've taken notes from this show, because it's a lot of good information. So,
And we want to remind our viewers that we will have part 2
coming up.
coming up with this show, because there's many more topics to discuss.
Well, Greg, this has been a great show with a lot of good information, and we want to remember
That give your pet a little extra love today and
And every
every day. See you next time.
bye.